Judith Estrin, our artistic director of Prism Stage Company. Judith.
Hello, I'm so happy to see you here this evening. This is a very special evening. It's very special in a personal way because I've had the pleasure and the honor of knowing Corinne Chateau since Prism's inception several years ago. She performed actually with a large cast in the very first staged reading that we had, and she has been a friend of Prism's through the years. I'm delighted also to tell you that not only is Corinne a wonderful, wonderful actor, she is a lifetime member of the Actors Studio, but she is also a playwright and an artist, a writer, and I'm delighted to see you here today, and I welcome you, I want to ask you, I'd like to start the show off by asking a question. With all of your talents, with all of your capabilities, why did you choose a film, the film genre to tell your story?
Well, I think it was because, actually I had thought about maybe a book first, but I had all this footage. It wasn't all professional footage, far from it, but I had all this footage that I had taken through the years because I've just always taken pictures. I've always taken video. It's a way for me to sort of capture the moment. And also I think, just being an only child and being the first one born in my family in the United States and not having too much extended family, I just always had this need to capture the moment. And so when it came to this idea of putting this story together, I thought, I have this footage. Why don't I let the people speak for themselves? It'll be so much more authentic than my trying to write it and interpret it and all that. Let them, and I've always loved faces and I love people telling their stories. So that's why I decided about the film form, not realizing how difficult, complicated it was going to get as it went on. But anyway, that is the reason, because I wanted to have it be authentic. That no acting here. This is not acted. That these are real moments.
So we should be clear that this is the documentary film form, as in you weren't intending to make a film out of this footage, but as you began your journey of discovering the truth behind these secrets, you found yourself video recording more and more of your interviews, and that's what the film?
I discovered more and more.
Okay.
And also it was really, I think it was my mother's death, actually, that gave me an urgency, gave me a permission, so to speak, to do this. I would never have done it had she been alive. It would have been too uncomfortable and too sensitive. And but after that, and because it was very sudden and unexpected and so much unresolved, I just began to think of this. I want to pull it together. There were so many threads, so many missing pieces, so many things that I needed to understand. And also it was really trying to understand her, why she was the way she was. She was very complicated. And then when she went so suddenly, I just felt I had to put it together. And also along the way, I had learned things that I had no idea about as a child. I had no idea. As I said, I was only child, the first one born in the States. And I didn't even know that I had this Polish grandmother until she appeared on the when I was 16. I got this surprise phone call, and there was this East European accent on the other line, and someone asked to speak to Danuta, and I knew my mother's Polish name was Danuta. Nobody ever called her that. And so I said she was away. She happened to be away. She was away for the summer. And she said, are you her daughter? And I said, yes. And she said, well, I'm your grandmother, and I've come from Brazil to meet you.
So this sounds like a perfect opportunity to ask, would now be the time to see the trailer of the documentary film you made?
Sure. And
how many years did you spend pursuing this information?
Well, I didn't know. No, I met her. She told us that she told me she found us through a private detective. I mean, that piqued my curiosity. But I didn't know much more because she lived in Brazil. I didn't see her that much. My mother had run away from her mother, didn't see her for over 20 years until my grandmother found us. And all I got from my grandmother, I mean, I thought she was wonderful. I wondered why was she kept such a secret, because I thought she was fantastic. And she told me about this great Polish family that I came from, Polish, intellectual aristocracy. That's what she said. And she was very proud. But so that's what I heard. I had, and I thought she was the only one. I mean, she told me that who were not killed by the Germans were killed by the Russians. I mean, I knew that they had left Poland during the war. I knew that they had gone to Italy and Portugal and then managed to get to Brazil. I knew about a little bit about the war, but I had no idea. I had no idea growing up that, and I only found this out really in my late 30s. It was actually the last time I ever saw my grandmother. She was 94, and she revealed that the whole family had been Jewish. And I mean, I thought maybe somebody was Jewish somewhere along the line, because when you hear these stories in every Polish family, maybe there's one Polish Jew, but I had no idea. I was completely shocked. And then I asked her, about my grandfather, my Polish grandfather, who had been a diplomat, and she told me, oh, he was Jewish too, until he converted. And I said to her, my mother doesn't know any of this. And she said, she knows very well.
And we have a clip for that. But now how many years spent together putting together the film itself?
The film itself, I'd say 7 years. I mean, since 2013, and there was like a year and a half break in between. I had, because basically I was producing it myself. And it was really very small crew, me and me and me. My husband helped every way he could. And then I did really luck out. I managed to convince this wonderful editor in Poland if she would work on it.
We are going to use this opportunity to segue so that your trailer can speak for itself.
Yeah.
Okay, and I appreciate Jacob being on the back end, letting me know. Here goes. There's going to be just a little bit of hang time here as we move into
thousands of years. Your roots are from our people, so I don't think you want to be the one
to disconnect. Well,
connection.
No, obviously I've been on this search and I've been trying to really put the pieces back together. It's almost like you throw a stone into a big body of water and you see all these concentric circles forming, getting wider and wider.
We have to solve this mystery.
Yeah.
Who are you?
You have nothing of Jewish people. We are taught in our generation not to ask, to make, where we were hiding, but we were hiding all the time.
We didn't talk about the past.
Not about the war and not about the Holocaust.
It's history. I'm Niox, and that's what I have. That's who I am.
So your father didn't know about her?
No.
She was ashamed of being Jew. I would shut up.
Even for Hitler, that is nothing.
Glory Nussbaum was famous.
Intellectual aristocracy.
What kind of scientist was he?
Psychic.
She has such a family.
I know.
My mother, she doesn't know any of this.
He's painful. I don't like to talk about things that are pleasant.
It's like this in all families. And you know, you've got the shiny side, and then the other one.
The shadow.
You won't get the shadow because they won't tell you.
Her big thing was, it always comes back. Anti-Semitism always comes back.
It didn't leave. It doesn't come back. It didn't leave.
It didn't leave.
Oh, Judith, I leave you to speak.
And I am, and my heart is broken every time I see this. I want to know, having been raised an Orthodox Jew in Brooklyn who hid a lot because I was terrified, my parents escaped the Holocaust by the skin of their teeth and lost the whole family, you know, so. And they were always, like your mom, they didn't speak of it. They didn't speak of it. And I didn't know until years later some of the stuff that had gone on because they just did not want us to know. But what they did do was teach us to be very, very careful. And I grew up and I was very, very careful. And I want to know, what was it like? What was it like for you? I know you were born in Chicago and you were raised in...
I was born in New York, but
New York.
The first nearly 7 years in the Midwest. But what was it like? You know, of course, I didn't know. I mean, I had no idea about the Jewish, and I was baptized, I was communed, confirmed. Not that I had any really strong religious upbringing. It was just, you know, baptism was sort of to give me a kind of Catholic identity, I suppose. And then the communion and confirmation I did because I had a friend who told me I'd go to hell if I didn't do that. So it wasn't any kind of strict religious upbringing. But I have to say that, of course, my mother, you know, was 16 when the war started. And she spent her whole teenage life running from country to country. You know, she lost her country, she lost her friends, she lost her education, she lost her language, she lost everything that she had known. And they were hiding this this identity. Now were already on an assimilationist track in Poland. My grandmother converted at 20, and my grandfather had converted at some point, and my mother was baptized at 8. But still, you know, as far as Hitler goes, they were Jewish completely. And so there was always this hiding your identity. And I can imagine that for my mother, and my grandmother was a very strong woman. And my grandmother managed, I mean, it was very, very hard to get out of Poland, out of Warsaw, once the war started. And they managed to get out in January of 1940. But it was all with hiding their identity. I mean, they were going as Catholic, and they had the great good fortune to have blue eyes. I mean, if you had blue eyes and money, I mean, that really helped. Of course, the money started disappearing as they had to pay everybody off along the way. But I think, you know, I can imagine that for my mother to have to always be silenced, you know, don't speak, don't tell, don't show, don't, you know, and my mother, even one thing she disclosed later on is that my grandmother had been a spy, worked as a spy. She said for the Polish government. I mean, you know, I think my grandmother knew languages. She was beautiful. She, you know, in Lisbon, you would go to cafes and listen in on conversations, and then you'd report it. But meanwhile, you don't want your child, you don't want your 16, 17-year-old around. And so I have a feeling it was quite traumatic for my mother. And I think that you know, and then landing in Brazil, a very, very foreign country to what she had grown up with, and then running to America. And it wasn't easy for her to get into America. I mean, 3 times she was refused by the United States entry. So, you know, all of this, and then being basically alone in the United States. She had a father, but he wasn't close by. And then unfortunately he died. And I think she was very traumatized. And because of all this hiding, quite compartmentalized, and I experienced her as a child as very distant. I mean, I felt very often I'd be with her and she didn't see me because her mind was somewhere else. She was distracted. And so there was this thing of hiding, and I think I absorbed that. You know, unconsciously. I didn't know it, but I knew very, very early on there were things I could say, things I should not say, be present sometimes, be not invisible other times. And so it made me very careful, I think, as a child, but it also made me very curious to know what was the truth. And also it gave me a great need to express the truth, which is probably why I went into acting.
On that note, because you're like ready to launch. On that note, could we show the video that you shared of you and your mother when you were young?
Sure.
Okay.
In certain ways, my mother cared a lot. She cared very much that I was outdoors at least 2 hours every day. I was brought up on organic food. You know, she didn't believe in doctors. She didn't believe in shots. She believed in fresh air in terms of my health and education. Yes, she cared. Except that if I could be with her, but she didn't really see me. I felt kind of invisible around her, or I felt I had to be very careful. I shouldn't disturb her, or I shouldn't interfere. I better just do my own thing. I seem on my own, pretty young. I seem on my own. I was always sensitive to my mother's emotional state. I always had to feel how she was doing. I felt I better do the right thing so my mother feels okay. I could never just be myself. And eventually I didn't even know what myself was.
I find these pictures of you as a child so compelling. It's so heartbreaking. Who took these pictures?
Probably my father. I remember he loved gadgets, and he got an 8mm camera, and then we would take turns videotape, not videotape, it was film. filming each other.
Ah, okay, but these pictures of you looking at your mother and your mother looking away are so heartbreaking. They're just, I must tell you that they break my heart every time I see them, you know? Yeah, this is quite extraordinary.
So, I mean, what I was, you know, then on one hand, it gave this, well, as I said, it gave this need to express. So it was a positive in the sense that it led me into the arts, it led me into acting, but there was always this kind of thing inside, except I didn't know what it was. I had no idea what it was, but there was always this thing inside that would make me scared. Oh, maybe I showed too much, or maybe I said too much, or maybe it was wrong, or maybe there was always, it was, you know, the way she lived from everyday life and death kind of thing. I think I carried that in my early years. I mean, and that's why I now, you know, talking about what to do in the time of coronavirus, it's pulled me into looking back at all these diaries of when I was a young actress, and seeing it through the lens of all that I learned along the way in doing this film. It's given me a whole other perspective of who I was then, and understanding now, you know, how on one hand I was so trying to be out there and doing everything, you know, to make that possible. And on the other hand, I would go and hide in a hole, you know, terrified of the consequences of something. So it created an enormous conflict in me. And
was this, making this film, was this at the end of the day, was this a liberating experience for you?
Oh, sure, because, well, I haven't said, you know, besides learning about the Jewish, see, after that, I thought it was the end of the story. I had no idea that there would be any family. And then a few years later, I get this call and from a man saying he thinks he might be, he asked me if I was related to this man, Clement. And I said, oh, he was my grandfather. And this man said, well, I think I may be related to you, and I'm trying to find out about my roots. And that launched me into this whole thing of, from him, I was introduced to his half-sister in France, and then I was introduced to people in Zimbabwe, and then I heard about people
in Zimbabwe.
These are all people that I found out I'm related to in some way, in Chile, and then in England, and you know, all over. So it became then this enormous, I had no idea I had any relatives. And then to find out about all these people, and then the unbelievable surprise was when I went to Warsaw in 2007 and went to the Jewish Institute, not thinking I would learn anything. But I told them what my grandmother had told me. And they were like in amazement, and they started pulling books down from the shelves, and this is this person from this encyclopedia and that person. And they were telling me, you know, you come from some of the more important Jewish families in Warsaw. And so, you know, it's just like, what planet have I stepped onto? You know, it was all a surprise. But I got more and more intrigued. And then I had the help of this cousin in Łódź in Poland, who also was trying to restore the history, because, you know, this war obliterated millions of people, and they've been forgotten. And at a certain point, I started to feel a kind of responsibility, not an obligation, a responsibility to, in some way, in my small way, restore something of that history. So
this is a really good moment to introduce this last clip that you shared with us, because when you say you had an opportunity to explore in some small way that which had been kept secret, and yet we're going to see that you were told with some people you can't speak. How did you navigate that push-pull?
You're talking about the clip with my grandmother?
Yes.
Well, you know, that was the night before we were leaving, my husband and I, and not knowing that that would be the last time I'd see her. And I was just asking questions, you know, about family, but she always told me about this Polish family, you know, and her famous psychiatrist grandfather and this and that. And then suddenly, out of the blue, she tells me the whole family was Jewish. Now, she was 94 at this point. I mean, her mind was still intact, but maybe some of the filters were, you know, less. And so she revealed this, and that was an enormous shock.
Oh, so your mother was Jewish? Ah, so it's close.
Yeah.
It's close. Now, Clement wasn't Jewish, no?
Clement changed himself.
Clement himself changed? He was born Jewish? So it's very close. You know, my mother, she says she doesn't know any of this.
What?
One time I asked her, and she said, no, it's ridiculous, never.
What? She said that?
I asked her if there was any Jewish family. She said, it's ridiculous. No, she said no.
She knows very well.
She knows? But why would she say no?
Because she's like this. She likes to say.
But what's wrong with it? There's nothing wrong.
Nothing wrong.
I mean, why? I can understand she doesn't tell everybody with the world, but why she doesn't tell me, I don't understand.
Don't talk this crap.
Oh, no, I won't talk about it.
Be political. Nice. And don't talk too much. That's like let's have talking hot slow. Because we are thinking, you are thinking. Make it better. Because you cannot change.
No, she doesn't like it. I'm not going to ask her anymore.
No, I don't ask her. Don't, how she is. How she is.
That line, there is nothing that you can change. What does it mean to you to know that, yes, you cannot change the past and you could not change your mother? What is it that you're doing that you might be contributing to now by sharing this story?
Well, I think I felt the need to do it to heal something. I mean, to heal something for myself. With my mother, of course, it wasn't so easy to do it with her in life, but I understand so much more about her, having gone through this, having learned all that I did. And so, and also for my grandmother, you know, on one hand, my mother cut off the past. And it wasn't, and I just want to say this, it's not so much because she hid, you know, the Jewish from me. I mean, that I understand. It was life and death. I mean, you know, the final solution was about wiping out every single last Jew on the face of the earth. So I understand that there, you know, that things were, you know, strategies were taken, but how it affected her is that she didn't just keep the Jewish from me, she kept herself from me. And so that was what was difficult. And so I was, in my way, putting this together, trying to heal it, you know, for her, I don't know, for her, for myself, and also for my grandmother, because my grandmother was trying to give me something. And she always tried to give me this sense of the past, of us good, because she knew a better Poland. I mean, my mother went through a difficult time in Poland. My grandmother knew a good Poland, and she was proud to be Polish. And she wanted to pass this on of coming from a good family. And so, you know, I wanted to honor my grandmother too. And also all these interesting people I met, and this, you know, I just needed to pull my story together because I think I always felt rootless. You know, I didn't have such a strong sense of identity. I think not having a strong identity, I could identify with other things. I mean, I could become a character, but it was hard for me to own my own self, which, you know, worked against me at times. So I think it's important to know one's story.
Is it important to tell one's story?
Well, I mean, it's up to each person. Some people don't have the need. I mean, if they feel very comfortable with where they come from, they know where they come from, they've lived in a community. I mean, I think you should only do it if you feel you have to do it. I mean, if it's a passion to do it. I mean, I had to do it, and but I think it is good to know. I think it is good to know your story and where you come from. And I can identify, you know, with so many people just feeling, you know, nowadays so marginalized, you know, whether you're Muslim or person of color, or you come from a certain country, or you're just not part of the dominant group. And you're not quite sure, you know, what your entitlement is. You don't, you know, and for some people, you don't know if you're safe, and so I can really identify with that almost more than, you know, being an American and having been born here and brought up here. I almost identify with the outsider looking in a little bit, because I think, you know, there is this generational stuff that gets passed on, whether we know it or not. So we might as well try to find out about it.
My question to you, this feeling of being, relating more as an outsider. You lived as an outsider in a way. Did your dad kind of try to pull you in, or was he also?
My father also was a teenager during the war, and also he was hiding in the mountains from the Germans, and then for a short while he was part of the French resistance. Then he was in the French Marine and somehow landed in America. It wasn't necessarily to move here, but that's sort of what happened. And he also didn't talk about the past, but I knew more about my French side because he had family in France. So I did go there. The first time I went was when I was 4, and I stayed 4 months there without my parents. I didn't know whether I'd ever see my parents again. I became this little French girl, and I forgot English. And so.
How old were you then? How old were you there?
4.
You were 4, and you went to live.
4-year on a plane.
Oh my goodness!
That's what happened, and not only that, we had to make an emergency landing in London, and then the grandfather, whom I had never met, was at a different airport. So I was really lost for many hours. So I didn't speak or eat for 3 weeks. I was quite traumatized by that, but I did love my grandmother, my French grandmother, and I got very close to her. But unfortunately, she died the following year. So there was a lot of loss in the very early years, and a lot of moving around in different languages, and so
you developed great resilience. You developed great resilience.
You do develop great resilience. You do.
Yeah.
So that's the positive of it. You develop resilience. You develop curiosity. You develop a sense of world, of other people, of other languages, so yeah, and I think it all helped me in certain ways with acting, but it also, because of this sort of injunction of don't go too far, don't reveal too much. Somehow, shame, but I didn't really know what it was that I was ashamed of. I just knew I would often feel ashamed.
So we have a question coming in from Sheila Evans. She wanted to say, first of all, beautiful and powerful work. And then said, especially beautiful and powerful in a time when healing is needed, and wondered how long you have been working on this overall.
As I said, the documentary itself, 7 years, but I think, you know, you have a certain number of everybody has a certain number of themes in their life. And I think my mother was a big theme in my life. And so in different ways, I've worked her through acting or through writing a play or through writing, you know, I have dealt with it in different ways. So, you know, she made it difficult for me, but on the other hand, she gave me a wealth of material to work with. So, so I can thank her for that.
Eileen Mullen would like to know, is it possible to have a screening of your documentary once COVID restrictions are lifted? Do you know what the next step is with that?
Well, this is very frustrating because everything has stopped. And I was supposed to be in a festival in Manhattan. I thought that was so great. I was at the end of April, but of course that's been indefinitely postponed. And who knows when live festivals will happen again. But the thing is, I don't want to show it on the internet until I can be in a festival, because it will make it impossible for me to show it. I won't be allowed to show it if I show it anywhere else. So, you know, I send it to people privately, but I don't, I can't put it on the internet. I mean, I can, but I don't want to, because I want to have the opportunity for a festival. You make a film to share it because you have something to say, because you want to, you want to be heard, you want to be seen. I mean, you don't act in a closet. I mean, you know, you want to share it. So yeah, of course. I mean, absolutely. So it is very, very frustrating. It's very frustrating for all artists now. I mean, Broadway has been canceled for the rest of the season, which means all off Broadway has been canceled, and every kind of job that's connected with theater has, you know, it's terrible. It's a catastrophe. So, but I do hope, I just want to say this. I'm so grateful, though, that I did finish before this happened, because I actually was in Warsaw just now, end of February into March, doing the post-production on the film. And I was just really at the tail end. And then I heard about this thing in coronavirus. I didn't really know what it was. And then it was lockdown. Lockdown actually happened in Warsaw earlier than here. And then everything suddenly was shut. And then the post-production place said, well, we'll have to, you know, postpone and finish up, you know, when this blows away. And I said, oh, no, we're really right at the end. We just have a little bit more, just, you know, some subtitles, the credits. I just have to hear the sound one more time. And please, I beg you. And so I did the end in my hotel room, you know, via internet, exchanging things with them. And thank God they were willing to work with me, and that I did finish, because had I not, I don't know, you know, when and how. And so I'm so grateful that at least I finished. But you know what happened when this lockdown happened in Warsaw? I thought, this is unbelievable. What a parallel. My grandmother, 80 years before, got locked in Warsaw. She didn't know how she was going to get out. And, you know, and here I am. I didn't know how I was going to get out. People said I better get on a plane right away because the borders are closing. But all I cared about was the film. But it was this feeling. I just had such a surreal moment. You know, and I asked her one time, you know, did you expect the Germans to invade? And she said, no, we didn't expect it. Came of a sudden, and we weren't prepared. And then it was all about how to get out. And then our whole life changed, and just as our whole world now has changed. And So it is amazing how patterns repeat. I experienced that many times in the making of the film, how patterns repeat.
And you chose to break a pattern that you were taught. Like you chose to shift one little leg of that pattern that you had been raised with. How do you have any advice for anyone else who has a story or a history that they are?
That's to do your story. I mean, if you feel, if you feel impelled, I mean, that's what's this coronavirus now has pushed me, since, I can't do too much else. It's pushed me to looking back at these old diaries and wanting to put them together and because I have a lot of interesting material and I have all these people I worked with and if not now, when will I do it? I mean, who knows how long anybody has? I mean, we're in a very, very unpredictable time. We just don't know what is going to happen. And so I think whatever is your passion, however you can do it within the confines of staying safe and, not risking other people, do it.
Nadine says, we love you, Corinne, Nadine, Yolanda, and Marie. We're here watching. Marie is in New York. Mom and I are in Maryland. Very nice discussion. Thank you for doing this. Eileen jumps back in to say that she's so happy you were able to complete post-production in Poland before getting back to the US and believes this is powerful, moving, heartbreaking, and important. Roy would like to ask, for starters, one, thank you for uncovering the secrets of your past. What were some of the ways that you actually practiced self-care during the time of making this film? And how do you continue to take care of your mental health as you continue to tell this real and powerful story?
Well, for most of the film, coronavirus didn't exist. So I didn't have that issue. And then when the lockdown happened, I stayed in my hotel and, was doing it in that way. So my mental health, well.
That's a good question for all of us. Please, pour forward.
I think staying creative really helps. I think it's really, even if you're suffering, even if you suffer in the act of creation, it's still, you're putting your juices to work. I think it's when you just sort of, plop down and sit in front of a TV set and listen to the news, that's pretty sad. You can really get depressed. But I think, it's very important to stay creative. I mean, my whole life, I went through a lot of, emotional roller coasters with all of this. I think because of where I was coming from, it gave me, and I not quite feeling that strong a home life and feeling shaky ground always under me. It gave me a kind of anxiety, but on the other hand, a sensitivity and a curiosity. And as I said before, this wanting to express and wanting to, I think if I had not been an artist, I might have really been a basket case, because I think a lot of this stuff would have hit me at a certain point, and it would have really pushed me way down deep under. And I think the fact that I had, always something that I wanted to channel it. So even when I went through my down moments, then something would come where I had an opportunity where I could express, and then I could channel those feelings.
And you've always been a journalist. You've always journaled.
I've always kept a diary. So that's sort of my, sister, not having siblings. I mean, that's who I go back to the page in the morning, and I just, whatever I'm feeling. I mean, this is, but it is interesting to look back on years and years later, what you wrote as a young person in the heat of the moment.
Joan Peters would like to know, Corinne, are you continuing your genealogy research, or do you feel that this documentary actually concludes that search?
I'm not actively searching, but there were a lot of unanswered questions, lots of things. So I'm open to hearing about things. I mean, I'm not on the road pursuing so much, but, you know, every time I would find something else, it might to put into question something else I found out, and then it would lead me to another country and to new people, and the journey is endless. It's not like you tie a nice neat bow at the end and it's you know, all finished. It's an ongoing journey. So I'm not actively, but I'm open, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of things still appear.
That was perfect. Judith, did you want to wrap with anything and then pass it to Jacob?
I want to say thank you. I want to say that from the time when we sat in my living room and you kind of began to tell, you began to unspool this amazing story. I have been on your case. I have been, you know, what?
You've been very supportive.
It's quite a story. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been just a miraculous and wonderful time. Thank you again so much. I just want to, before we leave, I just want to remind everyone, I'm artistic director of Prism Stage Company, and Prism's motto is talent has no expiration date. And as you can see from Corinne's performance, it really does not. This month we are supporting Black Lives Matter in a particularly robust way. Please go to our website. You can click on to Black Lives Matter, the button, whatever you call it in computer talk, and please make a generous contribution to this very worthy cause. We found it particularly relevant when speaking about Corinne's family history, that Black Lives Matter, and we have to respect everyone's lives, and we have to put our money where our mouth is.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate this, and thank you, Judith. I really thank you for inviting me to this. It's been great.